Deepwater Legends is presented by Magic Tail Outfitters. Precision tackle for legendary catch.
If you're heading to Alaska, you better be tough. It's cold, it rains, it snows, and the seas, they don't play nice. But if you've got the guts, the payoff is big. Captain Jimmy Counts of Homer Halibut Hunters knows where the monsters hide. He specializes in getting you that fish of a lifetime. Period.
Hey guys, thank you for tuning in to Deepwater Legends. I'm Nate. I'm here with Troy, and today we have a special guest, a friend of mine for about 20 years since I was in the Air Force, Captain Jimmy from Homer Halibut Hunters, Alaska. Thanks for tuning in today, Jimmy. How are you doing today?
Hey, fellas, how are you? I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. You mind telling us a little bit about what you do and get the listeners warmed up?
Yeah, I'm a charter captain in Alaska, specifically down in Homer. And we've got 4 boats down there, and we run mostly bottom fishing, but we troll for some salmon, fish for halibut, rockfish, lingcod throughout the summer months, and we make people's Alaskan adventures come true.
That's awesome. And before we get into it, I just want to give a thanks to our sponsor, Magic Tail Outfitters. He recently sent me a bunch of gear, and we're going to start doing a giveaway every episode for the next couple episodes. Tonight's giveaway, we're giving away 2 daisy chains and 1 Who Magic and 2 Joe Shoots, one 5 3/4 ounce, one 2 ounce, and one 1 ounce. All you have to do to win is just subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this video, and leave a comment. I'm in, and we'll pool in the next, not the next episode, but the episode after that, and we'll send it off to the winner at no cost. So tell us a little bit, how did you get into charter fishing, Jimmy?
Well, Nate, I have to give you credit for that because I fished my entire life. And once I retired, I had to find a new, I'm not going to say an occupation, but a new outlet for my time. And it was when you and I were down at your home in Florida that you brought up the idea of getting a captain's license and started doing charters and share my passion, our passion of fishing with the general public. And the rest is history. I went out and got my captain's license, and I used to live in Alaska when I was in the back years ago when I was a kid, and it's one of those states that just calls to you, never leaves you. And went up there on vacation and met a guy that had a boat, didn't have a captain. I was a captain, didn't have a boat, and I sent my family home on vacation after the vacation was over, and I stayed up there and we started a company.
That's awesome. Yeah, just to give the listeners a little bit of a background, Jimmy and I were in the Air Force together, and man, was he a pain in the ass to deal with then. He doesn't look like it, but he is a runner. And every day we would come in, he'd be like, "Do you guys want to run 2 miles or do you want to run 3 miles?" But the trick was if you said two, you're running five. And if you said three, you're running more. So we hated it, but a love of fishing made us connect after we got out. I was living down in Florida. Jimmy would come down to Naples. We'd go fishing. Then eventually I moved to New Jersey. Jimmy would come up to New Jersey to hunt and fish. We fished all over the East Coast. We fished down here in South Carolina, where we're located currently. Jimmy's in Columbia. We've done some freshwater stuff. Jimmy has a background in bass fishing competitively, and then ultimately turned into an Alaskan charter guide, and you guys couldn't ask for a better guy to have out there on the water. One of the things that he does best is actually catch huge halibut. His Facebook is just loaded with pictures of people holding up personal bests. What kind of recommendation do you have to people that have the dream of getting out to Alaska and really trying to tackle the fishery out there? Are there certain times of year that are better than others? Anything that they need to prepare for?
Yeah, some advice that I would give your listeners would be number one, plan early. Alaska is a land of finite resources, limited lodging, limited transportation, and limited opportunities to get out on the water, especially during those key dates, which includes your summer months. Typical high volume tourist, May, June, July, August, and in early September are your most popular dates. So I highly recommend to folks that if they want their Alaska vacation to go off without a hitch, book early and you'll get the dates that you want with the companies or the charter captains that you want to go out with.
And What kind of temperatures and conditions are you seeing out there, like in those summer months that's most popular? I know 2 summers ago, Troy went up there and fished with you for the summer, and I know he was expecting one thing coming from South Florida and received another. You kind of sold the bill of sale. Oh, it's 75 and sunny all the time. And
It's
Troy
40
called me.
degrees.
Yeah, Alaska's a special place. The nice thing about Alaska is it's a great place to go to beat the heat. You know, the high temperatures in Homer, if they get into the high 60s, maybe even into the low 70s on occasion, it feels warmer because the air is a little thinner up there. But most of the time, as Troy can attest, the temperatures are going to be in the 40s, maybe the heat of the day. Early mornings are going to be at or above freezing, but they're very pleasant because once you're out on the water, if it's not raining, it's not 100 degrees like it is down in the southeast in the middle of summer.
So, Jimmy, in Homer, Alaska, we mostly fish the Ketchimack Bay. Could you tell our listeners a little bit about their title changes that they have there?
Yeah, interestingly enough, the Cook Inlet Kachemak Bay area has the second largest change of tide in the world, plus or minus 25 feet. And for people that aren't familiar with what that would look like, it would be the equivalent of fishing in a river in the ocean. 7, possibly even 9 knots of current at peak tide change. It makes it extremely challenging. And at times, it can even be deadly to fish on those waters if you're not familiar with that environment.
Yeah, I remember the first time I got there, and we're walking down the ramp, and the ramp when we first went out there was pretty level, and then it is as steep as it can be, about 20 feet down. And we're walking down that every day. It was definitely a different change from being down in the south most of the
Yeah,
time.
and if you'll recall, one of the unique aspects of fishing up there is the weight. A lot of people don't work out before they're going on vacation, so they're not thinking about working out, doing battle with these fish. And it's not that they're like stand-up gear with a tuna or shark fishing, perhaps. You're fishing with heavy weights. It's like you're doing stand-up gear with 5, 6, 7 pounds of weight at times in current. And then once you hook into or tackle one of these true barn doors, these fish are angry. They don't want to come up, and they're going to use the current to their advantage. So it can be exhausting. You sleep very well at night when you hook into a good fish.
So, what's the biggest halibut you've personally caught up there in Alaska?
Mine was back in 2000 in Valdez. It was 434 pounds, short of the state record by not much. And it was a pretty exciting day. I was out with some very good friends of mine, also from the military, and we had a blast. But you don't see fish like that very often anymore. Unfortunately, a lot of the times, if you're hooking into fish that are in the 100+ pound range, maybe even up to the low 200s, you're hooking into some giant fish.
And what's like the average size fish that you guys land that clients can expect to land on like a regular day?
Yeah, two slots that I'd like to inform your listeners on. The first is when you go on a charter, there are rules, there are regulations, and we have to follow NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration. And their rules are we're allowed one underfish and one overfish. The underfish must be under this year 27 inches, which is an average size flounder. The overfish can be any size, but the average oversize, as recorded by NOAA through their Guided Angler Fish Program or GAF program, is a 39-inch fish, which is in the 20-pound range. It's not a terribly large fish. So the fishery itself, I wouldn't necessarily say it's in decline, but the pressure that's on that fishery due to trawling and sport fishing has really limited your opportunity to put numbers of big fish in the boat. We average, I would say the fleet as a whole, 1 per 6. So if you've got 6 people on the boat, someone on the boat at some point during the day is going to hook into a very large fish. You can almost put that one in the bank. Whether they land it or not, that's another story.
I also see that you guys catch a variety of other stuff. And we've seen that you got some really big lingcod. You get a bunch of rockfish. How's the standard day of fishing go for you usually? Like, how do you know when it's time to switch up? What do you target first? And so forth. Is it really up to the customers and what they want to do? Or is it like, hey, after we go beat up this spot, we're heading over here?
No, the captain's going to build a float plan based on the trip demographics. Let's say they book a multi-species trip. So you're going to have salmon on the menu. Seasons in, if it's after July, you'll have lingcod, you'll have rockfish, and then you'll have halibut. And the thing that people come to Alaska to catch are those large halibut. So typically, I would go out and target the halibut first and go ahead and check that box for them. Once we're done with the halibut, we'll run around and fish high spots, tag out on our one of 37 different flavor rockfish that inhabit the coastal waters of Alaska. And then we'd go out and chase our lingcod at the same time while we're jigging for the rockfish. And then finish that off with some trolling for whatever flavor salmon happens to be running. There's always king salmon in the waters, but as the summer goes on, you've got red salmon that come in, followed by your pink salmon, then your chum salmon, and then finally your coho or silver salmon come in the fall.
Now, I seen some of your videos, and those seas are looking really rough. How far on average are you guys running for these fish on a regular day?
Yeah, the weather really well, it's dependent upon the weather. If the weather's good, the seas are calm, the further you can go, the better the fishing gets. It's just you have to get away from the fleet that what makes up Homer. And any one day, there might be as many as 200 personal watercraft, not charters, but just personal watercraft in Kachemak Bay and Cook Inlet. And so, as a charter boat, we have the equipment and the ability to go a little bit farther than your normal weekend angler. So, we might run 70, maybe even 90 to 100 miles just to get away from the fleet and get on fish that haven't been pressured.
And what's the average water depth, Jimmy? I know, but let's tell our viewers.
Yeah, shallower is better, and it's difficult to find truly shallow water in the fishery up there as the continental shelf runs right along the the Kodiak Archipelago, which is what we're fishing when we turn the corner down towards the end of the peninsula. And so, we'll be fishing anywhere from, I would say, average 125 feet down to 300, 350 feet. I don't like clients to fish much deeper than that just because of the current. They have to fish larger lures. It's far more difficult for them physically to keep that up for any period of time. So we try to fish them as shallow as possible for as long as possible.
So I know Nate said something about the rockfish, and that was personally my favorite fish in my whole Alaska experience to go after, and specifically yellow eye. Could you tell our viewers about, that gold coming up that you are so
Yeah.
good at getting?
Yeah. The yellow eye rockfish is a treat for everyone, uh, mostly because the rest of the state you're not allowed to retain those fish. Unit 3A, which is the unit that Homer happens to lie in, you're still allowed to retain one yellow eye rockfish per person, which are of the largest rockfish that you can catch. They grow up to 40, 42, 44 pounds. So we routinely put 20, we retain the 25, 30, 38 pounders per person, and try to make those dreams come true for folks. And they only get one. The other in aggregate, the other rockfish have to be either a black or a dusky, which we do very well putting double digit sized black rockfish and dusky rockfish in the boat as well.
Weren't you like a pound shy of the IGFA record for the youth division?
Yeah, so we had an angler come up from California a year or so ago, and she was after 4 different fish, and we were able to submit entries to the IGFA for, coho salmon, halibut, yellow eye rockfish, and I believe it was lingcod was the 4th fish that she caught. She was 11, and she had her kit, and she was ready to go. She was an angler. Little girl was a stud.
So tell us a little bit about Homer Halibut Hunters. I know you guys offer way more than just trips. You guys are a resort and everything. How do people book it? What kind of amenities do you guys have? And how can they go about getting on your boat if they're from an area other than Alaska?
Yeah, so Homer Halibut Hunters is the saltwater division of a conglomerate of companies owned by Mr. Jim Voss, Captain Jim Voss. They have Kenai Riverside Resort, which is in Soldotna. It's about an hour, maybe an hour and a half north of Homer. and it's on the banks of the Kenai River. I believe that they can house as many as 40 occupants at one time. They have river guides and they target king salmon when available, red salmon, and silver salmon in the fall. And then new to the menu is that they've also out of Nikiski, a little town called Nikiski, they've added a float plane where they're doing bear fly-ins now. So you can view coastal brown bears feeding on red salmon and fish for the red salmon at the same time.
So, what kind of wildlife are you guys running into out there? I constantly see your videos and pictures of whales, and it's just incredible. And with the backdrop of the mountains, it looks amazing.
Yeah, for us, it's you never know what you're going to see out there. It's that's one of the beauties of it. There's 7 different types of whales that frequent Ketchikan Bay and Cook Inlet. Most of the time, we're looking at minke whales, orcas, and humpback whales, but fin whales have come through amongst a few others. We had a walrus there last year, which first time they'd had a walrus there in 34 years. And he hung out for about 6 weeks. He was lost. It was a young bull, got kicked out of the herd, but he hung out with the Steller sea lions out on Flat Island, which Troy is very familiar with at the end of the peninsula. And the clients loved it. He made the paper several times. The sea otters pup out in May, and a lot of the clients love to see the female otters with their offspring floating around out in the bay. And we'll slow down and cruise through the rookery and let everybody get their photos. And when the deckhands are on the back cleaning the fish and they're throwing the carcasses off the back of the boat, bald eagles will frequently fly down right down behind the back of the boat and grab a rockfish carcass and fly off with it, which is pretty unique because a lot of people don't have the opportunity to see bald eagles the way we do either.
So, what do you think your favorite part about Alaska is, and that really drives you to leave your home for 6 months a year to go out there and really brave the elements and the cold and rough seas every day? What do you think is most impactful to you that really calls you back?
Well, it's no doubt that they didn't film and name Deadliest Catch in those same waters for a reason. You know, they can as beautiful as the weather can be, it can turn on you in a heartbeat. I love the just the diversity of the ecosystem up there. I walk out the front door to my house in the morning and I'm looking at 2 glaciers across a bay. There are probably more black bears in Homer than there are people at any one given time. Moose, we had a cow moose deliver her calf in our driveway last year, and she stayed in the yard all summer, just hanging out. So, I mean, you never know what you're going to get to see when you open the front door up there.
I still remember you texted me one day where Troy forgot to take the trash out, and there was a black bear standing outside your door. You couldn't even leave.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was in the cabin up there, and I thought it was the guys knocking on the door, and it was 2 boar black bears that were getting into the food and the coolers and checking out our fire pit and just hanging out and causing a little delay in my getting down to the dock that morning.
To touch up on the scenery a little bit more, you left out how it's in the Ring of Fire, and you just see volcanoes everywhere from, Homer straight
Yeah,
out. You could
that's a
see them
that's a really
active.
that's a really good point, Troy. There's an acronym that you can use to keep the volcanoes as we run down the bay. There's 5 that you can see, and we use the acronym AIRS to keep each one of those peaks separate for the clients. And so you've got Augustine, Iliamna, Redoubt, and Spur that you can see easily as you run down the peninsula towards the happy hunting grounds.
Now, with it being with all the volcanoes there, it is very earthquake prone. I'm sure you remember that day very well when we had that tsunami warning, which was completely out of the blue for me coming from Florida.
Yeah, that was an interesting night. We had clients that came in from Utah. They missed their flight. They arrived at 2 in the afternoon instead of early in the morning, so they weren't able to make the boat. They had booked the entire boat, so they contacted me from Seattle. They said, "Hey, we're not going to make it in. We'd like to go out. Will you take us?" And I said, "You're the trip for the day, so of course I'll take you." So I don't think we left until 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock that night. And then I started getting phone calls. So I know you called me, Troy, and you were like, "Hey, man,
the
You
whole
know,
time.
there's a tsunami warning going off all over. Alarms are going off all over on the spit. And of course, I'm on the water, and it was oblivious to me. The Coast Guard hadn't yet put the NOTAM out, and yeah, so we sat out there for, let's see, that was at 10 in at night, and I was cleaning fish. Now, truth be told, I responded to the 2004 tsunami in Indonesia, so I know what that death and destruction looks like. And the safest place that you can be is on the water. So we motored out to the head of the bay, and just the earthquake took place about 7 miles east or west of Kodiak. And so it was in the area. And so they said, I think it was supposed to be like a 500-foot wall of water, something like that was supposed. And they told everybody to evacuate the spit. And looking back towards land, it was just a stream of red lights leaving the bars and all the restaurants that night, trying to get to higher ground. And so we sat out at the head of the bay, and I cleaned fish, and we waited on the all clear, and then we motored back.
Yeah, no, that was a very eventful night, man. I'll never forget that. Didn't even know that type of thing could happen. Looking at my phone, going, "Tsunami? What is this?" And then, just anybody, you go on Google, you start looking up the biggest tsunami ever, and it was actually in Alaska. It was like 11,000 feet. I knew Jimmy. It's 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. I knew he was still in the water. And I'm calling and calling and calling, and I'm glad it wasn't as serious as what I read. Definitely an eventful thing, though.
Yeah, it's
We know
something you don't
Troy.
forget. It sticks with you, that's for sure.
We know Troy wasn't one of those people leaving the bar, being kicked out of every bar in Homer, Alaska.
I think Troy
The
still
That's
ir-
had
true.
privileges at that point in the summer. I don't
Yeah.
think that he had, asked not to come back to the Salty Dog at that point. I think
Yeah,
he
I'm
was still
banned
welcome at
banned
the
for
Salty
life.
Dog.
the ironic thing was that they still allowed him to live in a camper in their parking lot for the rest of the summer.
Yeah, yeah.
You just can't come in, Troy.
No, one of my favorites was when Troy calls me. He was sharing a camper with one of our well, was one of our captains, and I get this strange text the morning of a trip, and it's like, "Hey, we're gonna be late," and I'm like, "What? What do you mean you're gonna be late?" And they were like, "There's some drunk guy in the truck." Like,
Yeah,
excuse me? And they're like, "We had to call the cops to get this guy out of our truck because he wandered over from the bar and passed out and slept in our truck."
Alaska's certainly an interesting place. There's plenty of beautiful scenery and stuff, but there's also neck tattoos as far as the eye can see. People are either there vacationing or escaping from the law.
It's very eccentric. I will tell you that. That's very true. Very true.
And everyone's got guns in Alaska. It's a great place
Yeah,
to go.
yeah.
I wouldn't want to
Everybody's
live there
packing heat.
personally.
so, something I
Absolutely.
recall from, Alaska is, when we were fishing, we caught this, species of lingcod that, when I filleted it, the inside of the meat was bright and vivid blue. You wanna tell our listeners a little bit about that species of fish and why is there blue meat?
Yeah. So it's a greenling, right? And oddly enough, lingcod are a greenling. They're not a ling and they're not a cod, but they are a greenling. So the kelp greenling, along with the lingcod, there is a subspecies that's very dark and it has blue features on the outside. When you fillet that fish, oddly enough, the meat is blue, sky blue. When you cook it, however, it does fade and turns back to pale white. Flaky, delicious, doesn't alter the flavor in any way. But yeah, it's a cool looking fish. And if you catch one, it's definitely photograph worthy.
So, what kind of rigs are you guys generally using out there for halibut and rockfish and so forth? I know you mentioned how heavy the weights are. What size hooks? What size leader and line? Let's get
Well,
technical on
yeah, if
this.
you ask Troy, a salted peanut and a 16-aught hook will catch cod. And I say that because I've seen him do it. Oddly enough, they were
Yes.
giggle farting in the back of the boat. And sure enough, they put a zip tied a dry roasted salted planter's peanut to a 16-aught halibut hook and wound up catching about a 25-pound cod with it. If I hadn't seen it, I wouldn't believe it, but it's true. I was there.
True story.
But on the normal, we're using 12-aught and 16-aught circle hooks, 400-pound leader. anywhere from a pound to 5 pounds of weight. Herring, any kind of cut bait. The easiest way to think of halibut, they're big, flat catfish. They like the stinky stuff. So octopus, herring, salmon bellies, anything you can get on a hook, that they'll eat it. So will the rockfish and at times the lingcod. I think Troy, you and I at one point, we even caught a few king salmon on 12-aught circle hooks and just chunks of herring
Yep.
fishing on the bottom.
Yeah,
King
completely.
salmon will eat it as well.
And do you guys ever catch octopus up there?
Yeah, last year I caught 8 individually myself as a captain of the boat, and, about 6 inches of octopus for bait goes about $20. So if you're catching a 5-gallon octopus, you're putting a pretty good dent in your bait expense, which is nice. Plus, it's delicious too. A lot of the locals up there smoke it, and then they have a dry brine. It's delicious, makes great table fare as well.
Also great bait.
Yeah, great bait.
So what's the usual day look like for your clients? What time are they showing up at the boat? What time are you leaving? I know it doesn't get dark in Alaska in the summer until almost midnight, and it's only dark for or close to dark for a couple minutes. How long of days are they spending out on the water? And I know you guys have a considerable run out there to the fishing grounds.
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's something I think people need to take into consideration when they book their trips. We meet usually between 6 and 6:30. I try to depart the dock as close to 6:30 as possible. And, a lot of that has to do with, getting everyone situated, making sure they have their licensure, all the documentation, their harvest cards, things that they're gonna need to be compliant on the water. We do a safety briefing. We launch. The weather dictates how long it's gonna take and how far we can go. But once we get out there, we stay out there until 2:30, 3:30 in the afternoon, and, then we motor back. So they're out there for a full day, and it's a lot of work. They sleep really, really well when they get in at night.
And what kind of boats are you guys running? I know you run a pretty large boat that's got a full cabin and a heater and everything, so people don't have to worry about getting wet in these rough seas.
Yep, good question, and that's also a key aspect to running a charter service is you've gotta be able to provide some sort of creature comfort and convenience for the client. So we run North River type boats. They all have cabs. They're heated. They all have lavatories on board, obviously for the clients, and they range in size anywhere from 30 feet to 44 feet. And we have 4 boats.
That's awesome. So you guys must burn a considerable amount of fuel up there. How difficult is it to get like boat maintenance and gear and stuff like that up there in Homer, Alaska with as remote as you guys are?
Yeah, as I told you earlier, we're the land of finite resources, and so qualified technicians, especially mechanics, are in short supply. And as you can imagine, the harsh environment up there, things break. They break regularly. So you've got to be kind of handy. And having a good mechanic on staff is a must. You've really got to have a team. Actually, you need a team of people that can weld, that can wrench, even doing fluid changes. I mean, you might be out and Troy will tell you, it might be a 30-mile-an-hour blow coming off the spit and rain, but you've got to get that 100-hour service done because tomorrow you've got another charter and every day on the water has to be the a special day, right? Because we are in a position where we don't have a lot of repeat clients. And I say that we have some, but a lot of the people that visit Alaska, they're first time visitors. These are bucket list trips. People just don't spend that kind of money to go up year after year after year by majority. There are a few that do, and they enjoy it. That's their thing. But a lot of our clients, they've saved their whole life, and so we do our earnest best to make every single day on the water special.
And are most of your trips usually open boat trips where people are buying by the seat, or are most of them people rent out the whole boat for the day?
Well, that's a really good question because it depends on the boat, Nate. 3 of the boats, they're open boats. You can book a 1 seat, 2 seats, or the whole boat. However, if you book the large boat on an overnight trip, you must book the whole boat. It won't go unless she's 100% booked.
And do you guys spend the night at sea, like, on the hook, or are you guys stopping in another island for the overnight trip?
Yeah, those overnight trips are pretty unique. So the way we work it is we leave Homer and we motor out to one of our far spots, right? We go down around the end of the peninsula or we go out to the Kodiak archipelago and we fish. That's the first day. We don't come all the way back to Homer. We come back to a little Russian Orthodox town village called Soldovia. We spend the night in a hotel. We have a good hot meal, a warm shower, live music, maybe a few drinks if they're old enough. And then we get up the next day and we're already an hour and a half closer to the fishing grounds. We motor back out to the opposite side. So if we did the end of the peninsula, Troy's familiar with East Chugach and that area, then we'll go straight out down towards Kodiak the second day and we'll fish the Barren Islands. And then that at the conclusion of the second day, we motor back to Homer.
So do they get to keep 2 days worth of fish, or is it still a
Oh
one-day
yeah.
aggregate?
Absolutely. So we have a system set up with contractors there that are absolutely wonderful people. Our fish care, everything is vacuum sealed and frozen and stored for us after the first night in Soldovia. As we pass Soldovia on our way back to Homer, I'll make a phone call once I'm about 45 minutes out. The contractors will come down to the dock. They'll deliver that first day's fish already boxed up and ready to go on the plane, and then we take it back with us to Homer. The fish that we caught on the second day is delivered to a fish processor who comes to the right to the slip and picks it up. They do a ticket, tell them how they want it to be prepared, and the following day that fish is frozen and ready for the plane.
So it's pretty easy for these people to get the fish back home because I know
We
that's
make
an
it
important
we
thing
make the
with it.
process as easy as possible, Nate. Yeah, absolutely. We want them to be able to basically go fishing, come back to the dock, and walk away and go to dinner. They don't have to worry with fish if they don't want to. That's the idea.
Do you wanna plug those 2 companies that you use for that? You know,
Well,
give
yeah,
them a
there's
little
only
shout
2
out because
processors in Homer. There's, Coal Point and, Homer Fish, and both I have well, I'm not affiliated with either, and I have, nothing but rave reviews for either company. They've both been fantastic over the years.
So with as rough as the seas are, how many people get seasick on average? Is it usually someone on the boat every trip, or is it, "Hey, these guys are pretty good, they're expecting it, they're doing Dramamine and stuff like that ahead of time?"
Yeah, it's every day, and the odd thing is I have people on the regular say, "I know what I signed up for," and then they get out there, and they weren't really aware of what they signed up for. So it's an everyday occurrence, and it's at least one, sometimes it's the entire boat, and I've had blue water Navy guys, United States Navy guys. Being on these 30 and 40-foot boats is not an aircraft carrier. You're going to bounce around a lot and it's gonna mess with your equilibrium. So if you have any type of an inner ear issue, it will exacerbate it tenfold.
Well, yeah, I know it's so rough that Troy lost 2 or 3 phones in just one summer on your boat.
Yep.
He's responsible for taking the videos, and it seemed like every couple weeks he's like, "Well, I lost them all."
Yeah, I felt bad for his Snapchat trend. It was
Yeah.
broken.
What's
Phones are
like a
subject to going overboard, it's one of those things where if you love it, don't take it on the deck. Leave it in the cab.
what's a funny story that you have for a charter? Has anyone ever done anything crazy or lost a bunch of gear or anything like that?
Oh, I mean, look, I think every charter boat captain has got that client that he can reminisce about. I'm certainly no different, but for this type of forum, I'm going to forgo the particulars out of out of respect just for the process. But just know, yeah, I think it's inherent. You spend enough time on the water when you're out there every single day, you're going to have clients that are going to break not one rod. I've had a client break 3 rods in one day, and at some point, you have to put your foot down and say, "I'm sorry, but your day is over." That's all I can afford to allow you to destroy in one day. Troy, you've seen it
I
firsthand.
have.
I've seen guys spool reels, and it's because they didn't know they were on the bottom. They knew they were on the bottom. They didn't want to admit they were on the bottom. and they just sat there with their thumb off the spool and just there goes $300, $400 worth of line, and it's like your day is done.
I think a funny story to mention is Troy ended up with a sore thumb one day because he tried to thumb a reel that had a line keeper on it, and ended up
Yeah,
pinching his thumb with a
Yeah,
halibut on the end trying to pull the line.
yeah,
I remember that fondly. Yeah, and that was a Y4 moment because it was like, do not use the rockfish gear to catch halibut.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think you
That's what
guys
we
Light
had
were
to
doing,
tackle.
weren't we, Troy?
Using light tackle, man.
I mean,
to
it's
break
fun.
the reel to get his thumb out.
I mean, it's yeah. I trust me. I remember that conversation. I wasn't on the boat. I think you, Troy, if I'm not mistaken, you were on the boat with Tor that day
Yes,
when
yes,
that
yes,
happened.
Captain
Yeah,
Tour.
you were on Scorpius.
So, how long do you plan on going up to Alaska? I know you and your wife just bought a beautiful farm here in South Carolina.
Congratulations.
What are your future plans? Congratulations also, you close on Tuesday. It's super exciting. Those videos look beautiful. I can't wait to see it. How many more years do you think you're going to be going up there, and what's next for you? I know you're not going to be off the water. What are your next plans?
Yeah, I love Alaska. I love to fish. And Alaska's a special place. I've been going up there since the '80s. It's something that I thoroughly enjoy. It breaks my heart to see what the salmon fishery has become up there because by and large, there's really no place you can go and retain a king salmon in fresh water. So I spend and I choose to spend my time on the saltwater because it's really the last bastion to go out and catch king salmon if you wanna retain them. That's the place to go to get it. Plus, every time you put a bait down up there, you have no idea what you're gonna catch. I mean, it could be a 200-pound halibut or one of 37 flavors of rockfish. It's just amazing. And then, of course, you had alluded to, we're expanding down here and just purchased a farm. I love to hunt, as you can tell from the backdrop here. My favorite thing to chase in the world is elk. As long as I'm physically able to do it, that's on the menu. That's something that I'm gonna do every opportunity that I get. But as far as the fishing goes, um, yeah, I don't see an end to me going up to Alaska anytime soon as long as my health permits it. Yeah, I'm getting a little older, but I'm still in pretty good shape. And so as long as I can go up and provide the service that I think people appreciate and look forward to, I will continue to do that.
Well, whenever you get tired of it, we got room for you on our boat, and we'll start something down here in the Carolinas. We're ready for you.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I love to catch mahi and tuna and all the pelagics that I like to do bottom dropping too. That's something I'd really like to go out and do with you guys is do some swordfish and some tile fishing. It kind of conflicts. The seasons kind of conflict, so it's kind of hard to be in two places at the same time. But I do love it. I mean, anytime I'm on the water is a good time.
I know one thing, you definitely wanna stick away from daytime deep drop swordfish because the second that you get one on there, whether you land it or not, you're gonna be hooked and you're gonna be like, "I'm not going back to Alaska, like, this is what I'm doing." It's the most boring, most exciting kind of fishing you could ever do. It's hours of boredom followed by moments of terror, adrenaline, happiness, sadness, like, it's just insane. Seeing fish come in and you're fishing 2, 3,000 feet of water. All of a sudden, you see a little tap on the rod, and 2 seconds later, you see a fish jump in the air and take off back down, and it's just like I don't even know what to do.
Now, Nate, I will tell you, it's not that much different with halibut fishing. And Troy will tell you, we
About the
have
same.
had large 100-plus-pound halibut breach, come up with a 5-pound weight and a 16-aught hook hanging out of their mouth and breach. And it's like, that just happened you know? And when you're looking over the side down in the depths and all you see is something that looks like it's the size of a small car and it's green coming up under the boat, it's like we don't have a big enough boat, a big enough gun, or enough manpower on this boat to get the thing in, but somehow we managed to get them in the boat for these clients.
Now, speaking of a gun, how are you guys landing these big fish? Are you shooting them? Are you harpooning them? Are you gaffing them? What's your usual methods, or does it
Yeah,
just depend on the fish?
I get that question a lot, and I don't know if Troy remembers what I used to tell the clients. I still tell them I carry two 270s on the boat, and that's each arm, right? I don't carry a gun. I have yet to catch a halibut so big that I am unable to harpoon it and then gaff it and then walk it through the tuna door. And Troy's been on the back of the boat with me plenty. And, 100 plus pounders, not a problem.
Pulling me overboard, Jimmy's grabbing me,
I had to do
and
that
there
once. Yeah, I almost lost all 125 pounds of Troy to a halibut who he was hanging on to the harpoon, and the halibut dove and pulled Troy, and I caught him leaning over the boat, and it was close. So I had to reach out and bring him back on the deck.
So what's the largest halibut that you've had a customer catch last year?
Yeah, we got one over 200 pounds last year. It was a 228 on the scale. And now that was after the fish had been on the deck for a long time and it had been bled. So that fish was plus 228.
And what's the usual fight look like for that? Is it pretty long? Is it pretty easy? Like, are they a fish that once you get them off the bottom, you can just crank them in for the most part? Or is it something like, hey, buckle in, you're going to be fighting this thing like a tuna?
It's hard to tell. Each fish is different. I've had them where they come right up and it's like didn't fight a bit. Very, very atypical, but it happens. And then we have it where they go on a run and then they come up off the bottom and you'll get them up to about 100 feet under the boat. And then they're going to take off and go on another run. And, it's really fish dependent. But big fish, you can tell because we're using extra, extra heavy Cedros tuna rods, and when they lay into a big halibut, that thing just doubles over and doesn't come up. It just stays over.
And what kind of reels are you guys using? What size? What kind of braid? Or are you guys using mono?
Yeah, another great question. So we started out with 20 wides, and they were a little large for stand-up gear for the client. So this last season, I dropped down to 16 wides, and we're using Makiras, two-speed Makiras. Those are much easier for them to handle during the duration of the day, and there's enough drag and enough line on those reels when you're fishing the humps to handle these large fish. We haven't had a problem landing one with the 16 wides. As a matter of speaking, when Troy and I fished together several times a few years back, we were catching them on 3D Okuma cold water line counting reels that you might use for, let's say, Great Lakes trolling. And we're using 100-pound braid at the time when Troy and I were doing it. We were using 80-pound braid, and we caught several fish in the 80 to 100-pound range. Now, these were in 50 feet of water. They weren't in hundreds of feet of water. These were very shallow fish fishing in the kelp, but that landed the fish, not a problem. And we landed those on medium heavy Travala rods.
And now I see a lot of posts with different guys that are up there that are targeting halibut. And it seems like there's two camps of people. There's the kind that are using bait and kind that are using really heavy jigs with like the big rubber worms on the back of them. Which one do you like using more? I know it depends on like the client and their abilities and stuff like that when it comes to it. But if you were personally to go out there and target it, which do you think's more effective? And which would you personally choose?
Yeah, so Nate, that's also a really good question. And what I would tell you is I would put that in actually three camps. The first being a bait and weight, anywhere from 1 pound to 5 pounds of weight with a 16, 12 to 16 aught hook using herring, right? Your traditional chicken rig, so to speak. Then you've got your rubber jigs, and you're using anywhere from a pound, half a pound, pound, up to as much as 3 pounds, and 12-inch grub tails tipped with your favorite bait, whatever that may be. And then one thing that you didn't mention that I would like to add to that equation are your metal jigs. You might refer to them as a slow pitch jig or your vertical jigs. Those are extremely effective, especially on the large halibut and the giant yelloweye. They cannot stand, for some reason, if you put a 14-ounce pink and chrome vertical jig down on a hump, if it's down there, it's going to eat it.
And what kind of depth are you catching the yellow eyes on? We're gonna post up a picture of a giant one that we have of you with it. What kind of depth are you pulling them up from? I know those rockfish live for a very long time. It takes a very long time for them to mature as well.
Yeah, so I'll give you this. So the rockfish live yellow eye rockfish live for up to 147 years. And we know this because the biologists take the otoliths, the ear bones out, And they age those fish by counting the rings in the calcification. It's like a scale that's embedded in the fish's head. And so that's how we know how old those fish are. We catch those fish anywhere from 80 feet down to as deep as you can fish. I mean, yes, they do come up on the humps. If you can get away from the fleet and get around to some of the less pressured areas, you'll catch them in 80 feet of water. But if you're going to be out around typically where the fleet gets to more, you may have to go down to 225, 250 feet plus to jig one up.
And how close to the rocks do they usually hold? Are they usually inside and around them, like really on them, or do they usually hold above them, kind of like an amberjack?
Yeah, no, like an amberjack, they hold above them. If you want to really get down in the nitty gritty on what holds inside the rocks, down there where the octopus are at in those little caverns, that's your lingcod. You'll know once you hit a lingcod, he's going to turn around and run right back in that hole. And Troy, you can chime in on this as well. We tell the clients on the regular, once they hit a large fish like that and that rod doubles over, don't lower your rod, stay high and reel down on it, because once you let that head turn and get in that hole, the chances of you breaking that fish off go up exponentially. And we're using 400-pound, 20, 30 inches of leader, and they're still just breaking these things off.
Just rubbing them against the rocks and then
Just
getting them
grinding
hooked
them
up
right
in
in the
there.
rocks. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough place to be jigging and fishing. Usually you would drop your bait down, hit the bottom, and then reel up a good 5 reels. This way, you're not hitting the bottom. And usually the bigger fish are above the bottom.
Yeah. One of the most difficult things to do to get through to the clients is I'll show them the lure and I'll explain to them this is a jig, not a drag. So jig it. Keep it moving, right? Don't let it down and then just drag it on the bottom, because the bottom it undulates and it's not level. And those jigs are very expensive. Lead is expensive. So, I want them to have that experience, and we'll take them off a bait and weight and put a jig on it if we think they can handle it. But the first time they go out and they turn that jig into a drag, it's over.
I know we go through tons and tons of jigs down here. Ours is mostly because of sharks. I
Right.
mean, we probably every other fish gets sharked here some
Yeah.
days. And are sharks something that you deal with a lot up in Alaska, or that's not really that much of a problem?
Yeah, last year, interestingly enough, so we've got kind of a unicorn up there. It's called a salmon shark. We also have spiny-nosed dogfish, and then once you get down into Southeast Alaska, they have some other types of sharks that we don't have in the Kodiak Archipelago up in Cook Inlet. We deal with spiny-nosed dogfish and salmon sharks, and the salmon sharks are not well known or documented, and the Alaska Department of Fish and Game are currently doing a study on those. And so when you catch one, it's required to be put and logged on your harvest record so that they can identify the size of the fish and where it was caught and what it was caught on. They have other questions that they'll contact you for. But last year, for the first time on a charter that I was captaining, we were out in a very nondescript, sandy area, well-known community. I wouldn't say, it was a community hole for halibut, and somebody put a whole herring down, and boom, 400-pound salmon shark came up to the boat. And I was surprised. We just don't see them that often. So it was kind of a neat thing for us to catch. It usually makes the talk of the marina because they have one, maybe two caught per season. And just so happened we got one, and the very next day another charter caught one in the same place. So yeah, it was pretty cool to see it. It looks, if you were to look up salmon shark online, what you might find is if a great white shark and a mako had a baby, and they're delicious. I've eaten them. They're absolutely delicious.
So I know you guys fish a lot of like tournaments and derbies up there throughout the summer. Is that something, if someone wants to plan their vacation around, they can charter your boats to go do that?
Yeah, so there's a halibut derby that goes on all throughout the course of the summer, and the richest tournament on the West Coast is the King Salmon Derby, which takes place in late March, early May. I'm sorry, late March, early April. And yeah, if they want to book to get on that, to be a part of that tournament, they can go through the Chamber of Commerce or they can book with us directly.
And now when people are booking trips up there with you guys, are they usually booking multiple days in a row? Do they usually take, like, days break in between?
So we're fortunate in that we provide, I would like to think, an exceptional service, not just a good service, but an exceptional service. We have more return business than the normal charter service in the area might have. For example, we've got folks that come from Texas every year and fish with us for a week. This year, we've got the folks from Texas coming back, along with a group that we took out last year from Utah. They're bringing up 35 people. They booked the boat for 5 days, all four boats. So it's one of those things. We're super excited to have that. We're honored to have that, and we work really hard, not just to get that, but to keep that.
And what kinda trips do you guys book? Like, variety of trips, not just offshore. I know you guys have float boats and all kinds of stuff. What kind of trips in total does Homer Halibut Hunters have for their guests should they want to?
Well, interestingly enough, on our website, homerhalibuthunters.com, our calendar is live. So when people go to book a trip, they can kind of book whatever type of fish they want to catch. There's a whole menu, and they can not only book the trip that they want to take, they can book the boat that they want to take it on. If they book early, if they don't book early enough, then they're left to book what's available. But if you book 8 months out, you can book any type of trip you want on any boat you want to fish on. If you fished with us before, and let's say you want to be on Orion, and you know that that's the boat for you, book it. It's it's
Now,
it's available to you and it's live.
if our listeners like what you have to say, they're like, "I'm going out with that guy," are they able to book specifically with the captain as well? Or is it just, "Hey, you get who you get?"
Yeah, they can absolutely do that. As a matter of fact, I'm very fortunate to have some returning customers that, um, you know, have requested that I be their captain, and I don't get out very much. I have 4 captains and 4 boats, and so I serve as the relief captain during the course of the year, but they've requested that I take them out, and so, very honored to have that request, and yeah, so I'll be their captain this coming summer.
Now, are there any, age restrictions? I know personally, the kind of people we see, but would you like to tell the viewers, the age discrepancies and, if they're handicapped, if
Well,
they can come out fishing with you?
yeah, I wouldn't say there's an age requirement. There are requirements based on age. Any age can come out and fish. I've had infants, and I mean infants, like weeks old, on the boat. They're required to wear a life jacket all the time, and it's really hard to find one to fit, but it can be done. I've seen it happen. But anyone 13 years or younger has to wear a life jacket all the time. And I'm going to tell you, from my personal experience, and Troy, I'd like to think that you're of the same camp that I am. Women and children are the best anglers. And the reason for
Yeah.
that is because they don't bring bad habits to the boat. They don't know more than the captain. A lot of guys do. And they listen. They follow instructions extremely well. And they usually wind up being the most successful.
Yeah, no, I remember there was that maybe 7, 8-year-old girl, her dad was just puking over the bow, and she's hooked into a 80-pound halibut, just reeling next door dad, puking chunks over the bow. Great memory, man. What about the handicap? I've
I
heard
do remember
you've
that story as well. Yeah, that little girl, her dad was sick as a dog, and she sat there and fished and caught all her fish while her dad was very seasick that day.
this was in, like, 6 to 8-foot seas too. She was, she was meant for the sea for sure. Could you touch on the handicap? I heard you, ran some handicap trips where people, with
Yeah, yeah,
disabilities,
we've
you're
we've
able
been
to
very
take
fortunate as
people.
well, and, I'm a disabled veteran myself, as is Nate, but I'm very sympathetic to that community, so when people call and they're like, "Hey, look, I'm in a wheelchair," or "I'm blind," people won't take me out because of the insurance liability. I'm like, "Get on the boat, man. Book the trip, I will take you." If I have to ratchet strap you to the deck, we've had several people that were, autistic, blind. We will do whatever we can to accommodate as many requests as possible. I want you to come up, and I want you to have that Alaskan experience, but I want it to be as fulfilling as possible. So everyone else says no, give us a call. We'll do our best to say yes.
That's awesome. And you're actually our first guest in probably 3 captains that hasn't talked about the dang cedar plugs.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a cedar plug fan, but there's just not a functional use up there in Alaska. If I thought I could catch something on it, I'd probably be trolling one.
We'll take one up there this year. If you catch something on it, come back on. We'll talk about cedar plug
Plugs.
use in Homer, Alaska as well. These guys seem to love it, man. Well, I want to thank you for coming on. I want to give you an opportunity to give like a 1-2 minute plug on why people should come out to Homer halibut hunters, what drives you to love Alaska as much as you do, and want to share it with everyone possible.
Yeah, so again, I'm with Homer Halibut Hunters, but it doesn't matter whether you fish with me or another company. I encourage everyone at some point in their life to come and experience Alaska. It's a state that's twice the size of Texas. It is the largest state. It is a majestic state. It is beautiful from one end to the other. And I highly encourage people to come up and spend at least 7 to 10 days, if you can make it 14, just because it's larger than you think it is. Getting from point A to point B takes time, and you need to book a little bit of me time in there so that you can relax and let it all sink in. You might see the northern lights one night. You might go see a glacier. You might make a snowball up on that glacier while you're dog sledding in the middle of July. It is just such a unique state. So hopefully your clients, your listeners, know if they've ever thought about coming to Alaska, book that trip, get up there, see it, enjoy it, take lots of pictures, but get up there as soon as you can.
Yeah, it's certainly an awesome place. I spent some time in Alaska and it was beautiful. The only thing not beautiful in Alaska was the women. That didn't stop Troy though. But
It just depends on where you are when you're perusing the catalog of what's available.
And it was still an awesome time. I loved the remoteness of it and the fact that like you're driving on dirt roads everywhere, and it really just is a rough, tumble kind of place with the elements, the state birds, the mosquito there. They're everywhere. Pack
Yeah,
a
and
ton of
I'll
bug
say this,
spray.
Nate, one thing that I didn't mention that Troy should also be able to wholeheartedly embrace, there is no such thing as bad weather, only bad gear. So you bring the
Yep.
best gear you can afford, you're gonna be fine, but bring it. Dress in layers, bring the best rain gear that you can get, know it's gonna rain because it is a rainforest up there, and then, you won't be surprised when it's, snowing in July.
A lot of our best pictures of Troy are actually him and his Grundens with the
Yep.
hood up,
Yeah,
the red and
Troy
blue.
Troy's normal,
Definitely.
dress posture up there was, about, 3 long sleeve shirts, a hoodie, and his bibs,
Long
and his rain
johns.
jacket, and a toboggan on his head,
Yeah. It's cold. It's
and
cold up
probably 2
there.
pairs of gloves, and that
Yep.
was in
I don't
July.
think I don't think I seen a picture that looked warm or didn't have rain.
There are beautiful days up there.
There
There's some
are. There
beautiful
are.
days.
Well, thank you again for coming on. I want to give a big shout out to our sponsor, Magic Tail Outfitters. Like I said, we are doing a giveaway. Like this video, subscribe to our channel, and comment, and we will be sending this out. We will announce the winner in 2 weeks and send this out. We're going to do giveaways on every episode for the next couple weeks, get you guys geared up for spring. Also, if you go to magictailoutfitters.com, use the code DeepWaterLegends, one word, all capital letters, for 15% off your $50 order or more. They're the rods and the lures and the gear that we use. This stuff holds up. It catches the biggest fish. Most of the people on our show use that stuff on a regular as well. 705-pound bluefin tuna that was dressed by John Azato was caught on that stuff. And we fished all over with that gear, and it's just incredible. It's not something that we're just pushing out on anything. I've been friends with Dante for years, and it's something that I've used before. We've been doing this, and it's something that I'm happy to stand behind and really push now because it's something that we believe in. We already had it. We already use it, and it's just excellent stuff. Anytime you're in tournaments, you probably don't pass a boat that doesn't have Joe Shoots or Who Magics on them. And if it doesn't, they're probably not in the money anyways, so you don't have to worry about them. But certainly check those guys out. They're awesome. If they made stuff for catching halibut, I'm sure Captain Jimmy would be using it too up there. But
Oh,
thank you for
absolutely.
tuning in. We appreciate you guys. Please like and subscribe our channel. Every like and subscription counts and helps us bring you guys more content and videos and everything. We love doing this. We love that you guys are really watching our stuff and listening to what we have to say and supporting our awesome guests that are taking time out of their day to come on here. Each person's better than the last and an absolute pleasure. We vet these guys heavily before they come on. They're people we've either known for a significant amount of years or they're friends of someone that we've known, and they're not going to take you out there and not catch anything. These are all guys that are slayers and absolute legends in their field and are going to absolutely get you the fish that you're looking for. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you, Captain Jimmy, for coming on. It's a pleasure as always. I look forward to seeing you before you leave for Alaska, and congratulations on your new house.
Thanks, Nate. It was good seeing you there, Pennsylvania Pounder.
I think one of the funny things before we sign out is that Jimmy's nickname is the Homer Hammer, but
Yeah, well, I
Troy's
didn't go
nickname when he was
homosexuals on you. Just know that, Troy.
Troy's nickname in Alaska was the Homer Sexual.
Oh, we had some good times.
Too many to talk about, and we'd have to R-rate this thing. The Ring of Fire wasn't just about the volcano; it was about a chick that Troy dated up there too.
Man,
Don't forget to get that annual STD check, brother.
I will.
He's been getting it twice a week lately. Have a good night, guys. We will see you later. Thank you for tuning in.
Jimmy.
We appreciate you. Thank you, Jimmy.
Peace.
That was good.